are places on earth
where time does not pass. It accumulates. Where every stone carries the weight of 1,000 prayers, and every valley holds the echo of armies long since turned to dust. This is the land between the river and the sea, a strip of territory no larger than a sliver, yet dense with more history, more faith, more conflict, and more meaning than perhaps anywhere else on the planet. For more than 3,000 years, empires have risen and fallen here. Prophets have walked these hills. Kingdoms have been built, burned, and buried, only to be unearthed centuries later by archaeologists brushing away the sand. And beneath it all, secrets. Secrets written in scrolls hidden in caves. Secrets carved into the walls of tombs. Secrets whispered in languages the modern world has forgotten how to speak. This is a land where three of the world's great faiths trace their origins, where the sacred geography of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam overlaps in ways both profound and contested. But beyond the headlines, beyond the borders drawn and redrawn by war and treaty, lies something else entirely. A world of salt seas that heal, of deserts that bloom, of ancient monasteries clinging to cliffs, and cities older than memory itself. Welcome to Israel and Palestine, a journey into the secrets they've been hiding for 3,000 years. To understand this land, one must first understand its bones. The Great Rift Valley, one of the most dramatic geological features on Earth, slices through this territory like a wound that never fully healed. It stretches from the mountains of Lebanon in the north to the Red Sea in the south, creating a landscape of extremes. At its lowest point lies the Dead Sea, the lowest place on the surface of the Earth, more than 430 meters below sea level, a basin so deep, so ancient, that the water here has had millions of years to concentrate into something almost otherworldly, 10 times saltier than the ocean, so dense that the human body floats effortlessly on its surface. Few people know that this sea is dying. It drops by more than a meter each year, leaving behind white salt flats that crunch underfoot like frozen snow. Sinkholes appear without warning, swallowing roads and date palm groves into the earth. Yet for all its harshness, there is beauty here. At dawn, when the sun rises over the mountains of Jordan, the water turns from black to silver to gold. The air hangs thick and still, and for a moment, it feels as though you have stepped outside of time altogether. The ancients called it the Sea of Salt. The Greeks called it the Dead Sea, because nothing lives in its waters. No fish, no plants, no algae, only salt and minerals, concentrated over millennia into something almost medicinal. Cleopatra herself is said to have prized the bitumen that once floated to its surface. The Egyptians used it for mummification. And to this day, people come from around the world to float in its waters, believing in its power to heal. But the Dead Sea holds more than minerals. It holds memory. Rising from the western shore of the Dead Sea, a mesa of rock stands alone against the sky. This is Masada, a fortress built by a king who trusted no one, and the site of one of history's most haunting last stands. More than 2,000 years ago, King Herod the Great, the same ruler who ordered the construction of the Second Temple in Jerusalem, built this palace complex as a refuge from his enemies. He feared assassination, he feared invasion, he feared perhaps most of all, his own people. And so, he created a fortress in the sky. The engineering defies belief. Herod's architects carved enormous cisterns into the rock to capture every drop of rainwater. They built storehouses capable of holding food for years. They constructed bathhouses with heated floors, mosaics, and frescoed walls, all perched on a plateau in the middle of the Judean Desert. Masada was not just a fortress, it was a statement of power. But its most famous chapter came decades after Herod's death. In 73 CE, after the fall of Jerusalem and the destruction of the Second Temple, nearly 1,000 Jewish rebels fled to Masada. For 3 years, they held out against the Roman 10th Legion, one of the most feared military forces in the ancient world. The Romans built a siege ramp that still scars the mountainside today. Stone by stone, month by month, an empire's patience against a people's desperation. When the Romans finally breached the walls, they found silence. According to the historian Josephus, the defenders had chosen death over slavery. They had drawn lots, killed their families, and then themselves, leaving only 2 women and 5 children to tell the story. Whether the account is fully accurate, historians still debate, but the power of the narrative endures. Today, Israeli soldiers are sworn in at Masada with the words, "Masada shall not fall again." The sun sets behind the mountains, and the stones glow amber in the fading light. And somewhere in the silence, you can almost hear the echoes of those who chose to end their story on their own terms. 40 kilometers to the west, rising from the Judean hills like a crown of stone, lies the city that has shaped more human history than perhaps any other. This is Jerusalem. For more than 3,000 years, Jerusalem has been conquered and reconquered, destroyed and rebuilt, fought over and prayed for by Jews, Christians, and Muslims alike. It has been besieged more than 50 times, captured and recaptured more than 40, completely destroyed twice, and yet it endures. One of the oldest cities on earth, Jerusalem appears in Egyptian texts from nearly 4,000 years ago. It was the capital of King David's kingdom, the site of Solomon's temple, the place where, according to tradition, Abraham prepared to sacrifice his son Isaac on Mount Moriah. For Christians, it is the city where Jesus was crucified and resurrected. For Muslims, it is the place from which the Prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven. 3 faiths, 1 city, and a tension that has shaped the modern world. But beyond the politics, beyond the conflict, Jerusalem holds secrets that few visitors ever see. Beneath the streets of the old city lies another city entirely, a labyrinth of tunnels, cisterns, and ancient foundations that archaeologists have been excavating for more than a century. Some of these tunnels date back to the time of King Hezekiah, who carved a water channel through solid rock to protect Jerusalem's water supply during an Assyrian siege. Others were built by the Romans, the Crusaders, the Ottomans, each layer of history pressing down upon the next. To walk through these tunnels is to walk through time itself. At the heart of Jerusalem's old city rises the Temple Mount, known to Muslims as the Haram al-Sharif, the noble sanctuary. This is, quite simply, one of the most contested pieces of real estate on earth. According to Jewish tradition, this is the foundation stone, the place where God began the creation of the world. It is where Abraham bound Isaac, where the Ark of the Covenant once rested in the Holy of Holies. For Muslims, it is the place where the Prophet Muhammad was transported from Mecca on a miraculous night journey, and from which he ascended through the 7 heavens to receive the commandment of prayer. The Dome of the Rock, with its gleaming golden cupola, has dominated Jerusalem's skyline for more than 1,300 years. Built in the 7th century by the Umayyad Caliph Abd al-Malik, it is one of the oldest and most beautiful architecture of Islamic architecture in the world. The dome itself is covered in gold leaf, a gift from King Hussein of Jordan in the 1990s, after the original aluminum covering had worn away. It catches the light at every hour, visible from nearly every corner of the city. Inside, the rough stone surface of the foundation rock breaks through the marble floor. It is roped off, inaccessible to most visitors, but its presence fills the space with a silence that feels almost physical. Pilgrims remove their shoes, they speak in whispers, and for a moment, the weight of the world's 3 great monotheistic faiths seems to press down upon this single point of stone. Just steps away, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the 3rd holiest site in Islam, has stood for nearly as long. It is here that Muslims gather for Friday prayers, sometimes tens of thousands at a time. And yet, for Jews, the Temple Mount remains the holiest site in existence, the place where the 1st and 2nd temples once stood, and where tradition says the 3rd temple will one day be built. This intersection of sacred geography has made Jerusalem a flashpoint for conflict across millennia, but it has also made it something else, a place where faith is not abstract, where history is not distant, where the divine, for those who believe, feels almost within reach. Below the Temple Mount, on its western side, stands a wall of massive stones that has witnessed more prayers than any other structure on earth. This is the Western Wall, the Kotel, the last remnant of the retaining wall that once surrounded the Second Temple before the Romans destroyed it in 70 CE. The stones themselves are enormous, some weighing more than 500 tons. They were cut with such precision that no mortar was needed. 2,000 years later, they still hold. At all hours, in all seasons, people come to pray here. They press their palms against the ancient limestone. They tuck folded notes into the cracks between the stones, prayers, hopes, pleas, written in every language on earth. More than 1 million notes are collected each year and buried on the Mount of Olives. Men pray on one side, women on the other, separated by a partition. Some sway gently, lost in devotion. Others weep openly. Soldiers in uniform stand beside elderly rabbis. Tourists in hiking boots stand beside Hasidic men in black hats and long coats. For the Jewish people, the Western Wall is more than a relic. It is proof of continuity, evidence that despite exile, persecution, and genocide, something of the ancient world has survived, that the prayers of their ancestors still echo in the same stones. Few visitors know that the visible portion of the wall is only a fraction of its full length. The Western Wall tunnels extend for hundreds of meters beneath the old city, revealing sections of the original wall that have been hidden for centuries. Here, archaeologists have discovered ancient streets, ritual baths, and even a massive stone that weighs more than 600 tons, one of the largest building blocks ever used in the ancient world. How the builders of 2,000 years ago moved such a stone remains a mystery. A few hundred meters from the Western Wall, in the Christian quarter of the Old City, stands a church that marks the place where, according to tradition, Jesus Christ was crucified, buried, and resurrected. This is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the holiest site in Christianity. The church itself is a labyrinth of chapels, shrines, and hidden corners, controlled by 6 different Christian denominations who have shared, and often fought over, this sacred space for centuries. Greek Orthodox, Armenian Apostolic, Roman Catholic, Coptic, Ethiopian, and Syriac Orthodox priests each guard their designated areas with a vigilance that borders on territorial. So delicate is the balance that the keys to the church has been held by 2 Muslim families since the 12th century, a compromise that has prevented any one Christian group from claiming sole authority. And on a ledge above the main entrance, a wooden ladder has remained in the same position since at least 1852. No one can move it without the agreement of all 6 denominations. And so it stays, a monument to sacred stubbornness. Inside, pilgrims wait in line to enter the tomb itself, a small chapel called the Edicule, rebuilt in the 19th century over what is believed to be the original rock-cut tomb where Jesus was laid to rest. The space is cramped, lit by hanging oil lamps, thick with incense. Visitors are allowed only moments before the next group presses forward. And yet those moments carry a weight that is difficult to describe. In 2016, for the first time in centuries, the marble slab covering the burial bed was removed. Beneath it, archaeologists found the original limestone surface, exactly where tradition said it would be. Whether one believes in the resurrection or not, the continuity of devotion at this site is undeniable. For nearly 1,700 years, pilgrims have journeyed here, many risking their lives to touch the stone where they believe salvation began. Winding through the narrow streets of the old city, a path marked by stone plaques traces the route that Jesus is believed to have walked on his way to crucifixion. This is the Via Dolorosa, the Way of Sorrows. 14 stations mark the journey, each one commemorating a moment from the biblical account. Here, Jesus fell for the first time. Here, he met his mother. Here, a passerby named Simon of Cyrene was forced to carry the cross. On Friday afternoons, Franciscan friars lead processions along the route, chanting prayers in Latin as they have for centuries. Pilgrims from around the world follow, some carrying wooden crosses on their shoulders, retracing the path of suffering. The streets are narrow, the crowds press close, shopkeepers continue their business alongside, and somehow the sacred and the ordinary coexist. Not everyone is certain that this route is historically accurate. The locations were designated in the medieval period, long after the original streets had been buried beneath layers of later construction. But historical accuracy for many pilgrims is beside the point. What matters is the act of walking, of remembering, of placing one's feet, however imperfectly, in the footsteps of faith. East of the Old City, across the Kidron Valley, rises the Mount of Olives, a ridge that has watched over Jerusalem for millennia. This is one of the oldest and most sacred cemeteries in the world. More than 150,000 graves cover its slopes, their white stones facing the Temple Mount in anticipation of the resurrection that Jewish tradition says will begin here at the end of days. Prophets, rabbis, and ordinary believers have been buried on this hillside for more than 3,000 years. To be laid to rest here is considered one of the highest honors. At the foot of the mount lies the Garden of Gethsemane, the place where, according to the Gospels, Jesus spent his final night in prayer before his arrest. Ancient olive trees still grow here, their gnarled trunks twisted by centuries. Some botanists believe that portions of these trees may date back 2,000 years, that their roots at least may have witnessed the events described in Scripture. The garden is small, surrounded by walls, protected by the Franciscan order. Visitors speak in whispers. The sound of birdsong mingles with distant traffic. And in the stillness, it is possible to imagine a night of anguish, a betrayal, and a prayer that the cup might pass. Above the garden, the Church of All Nations, also called the Basilica of the Agony, shelters a section of bedrock where Jesus is said to have prayed. Its windows are made of purple glass, casting the interior into perpetual twilight. Even at midday, the church feels like night. Beneath the streets of modern Jerusalem, hidden from casual view, lies a discovery that rewrote the timeline of human history. This is the city of David, the original Jerusalem. For centuries, scholars assumed that King David's capital, the Jerusalem of the Bible, was located beneath the Temple Mount or the Old City. But in the late 19th century, archaeologists began excavating a narrow ridge south of the walls, and what they found changed everything. Here, they uncovered fortifications dating back more than 3,800 years, water systems carved through solid rock, seals bearing the names of officials mentioned in the Hebrew Bible. Most remarkably, they found Hezekiah's tunnel, a 533-meter channel carved through the bedrock around 700 BCE to protect Jerusalem's water supply during an Assyrian siege. Visitors can still walk through this tunnel today, wading through knee-deep water in near-total darkness, following the same route that workers carved with hand tools more than 2,700 years ago. An inscription found at the tunnel's end, now housed in a museum in Istanbul, describes the moment when the two teams of diggers, working from opposite ends, finally met in the middle. For those who believe the Bible is history, the City of David offers tangible proof. For those who view it as literature, it offers context. Either way, the stones speak. Southeast of Jerusalem, where the Judean hills give way to the wilderness of the Dead Sea, lies a landscape of canyons, caves, and silence. This is the Judean Desert, and it has been hiding secrets for millennia. In 1947, a Bedouin shepherd, searching for a lost goat, threw a stone into a cave near the Dead Sea. He heard the sound of breaking pottery. Inside, he found clay jars containing scrolls wrapped in linen, documents that had been hidden for nearly 2,000 years. The Dead Sea Scrolls, as they came to be known, are among the most significant archaeological discoveries ever made. They include the oldest known manuscripts of the Hebrew Bible, some predating the previously oldest copies by more than 1,000 years. They include community rules, apocalyptic prophecies, and texts that had been lost to history. More than 900 scrolls and fragments were eventually recovered from caves throughout the region. Many are now housed in the Shrine of the Book in Jerusalem, displayed in a building designed to resemble the lids of the jars in which they were found. Who wrote the scrolls remains a subject of debate. Most scholars believe they were the work of a Jewish sect called the Essenes, who lived in the nearby settlement of Qumran between the 2nd century BCE and 68 CE. They were ascetics, devoted to purity, convinced that they were living in the final days before divine judgment. When the Romans approached during the Jewish revolt, the Essenes hid their most precious texts in the surrounding caves, and then vanished from history. For 1,900 years, the scrolls waited in darkness. Carved into the cliffs of a remote canyon in the Judean Desert, a monastery clings to the rock face like a vision from another world. This is Saba, one of the oldest continuously inhabited monasteries on Earth. Founded in 483 CE by Saint Sabas, a monk from Cappadocia, the monastery has been home to Eastern Orthodox monks for more than 1,500 years. They came seeking solitude. They found stone and silence. The complex cascades down the cliff in a tumble of domes, walls, and towers. Some rooms carved directly into the rock, others built on ledges that seem to defy gravity. At its peak, more than 5,000 monks lived in the caves and cells of this canyon. Today, fewer than 20 remain. Women are not permitted to enter. Even female animals are forbidden within the walls. The monks follow the same daily rhythms of prayer and work that their predecessors established centuries ago, rising before dawn, chanting in the ancient church, tending their gardens and welcoming the rare pilgrim who makes the journey. Beneath the monastery's church lies the body of Saint Sabas himself, miraculously preserved, according to tradition, without embalming. For centuries, his relics were kept in Venice. In 1965, Pope Paul VI returned them to Masada as a gesture of ecumenical goodwill. The canyon is silent, except for the sound of wind. The light shifts across the cliffs as the hours pass, and somewhere in the stillness, the monks continue their vigil, holding a thread of prayer that has never been broken. In the Jordan Valley, at the foot of the Judean hills, lies a city that may be the oldest continuously inhabited settlement on Earth. This is Jericho, a place where humans have lived for more than 11,000 years. Long before the pyramids of Egypt, long before Stonehenge or the temples of Mesopotamia, people gathered at this oasis in the desert and built a community. Archaeologists have uncovered more than 20 layers of civilization here, each one built upon the ruins of the last, forming a tell that rises like a layer cake of human history. At the base of the tell stands a stone tower dating to approximately 8000 BCE, one of the oldest monumental structures ever discovered. Its purpose remains unclear. A watchtower? A ritual center? A symbol of power? Whatever its function, it represents a turning point in human civilization. The moment when nomadic peoples began to settle, to build, to imagine a future rooted in place. For readers of the Hebrew Bible, Jericho holds another significance. It is the city whose walls came tumbling down at the sound of Joshua's trumpets, the first Canaanite stronghold to fall before the Israelites entering the Promised Land. Whether the account is literal history or theological narrative, the story has resonated across millennia. The walls of Jericho became a symbol of divine intervention, of the impossible made possible. Today, Jericho is a Palestinian city, its ancient tell visible from the main road. Date palms and banana groves surround it, fed by the same springs that have sustained life here since the Stone Age. The oldest city continues. North of the Judean Desert, beyond the hills of Samaria, the land softens into a region of green valleys, blue water, and cool breezes. This is the Galilee, the landscape that shaped the early years of Christianity. For Christians, the Galilee is sacred geography. It is here, according to the Gospels, that Jesus spent most of his life, growing up in the village of Nazareth, calling his first disciples from the shores of the Sea of Galilee, preaching the Sermon on the Mount, walking on water, multiplying loaves and fishes. The Sea of Galilee, known in Hebrew as the Kinneret, is not a sea at all, but a freshwater lake fed by the Jordan River. It lies more than 200 meters below sea level, making it the lowest freshwater lake on Earth. Its shores are gentle, its waters calm, except when sudden storms sweep down from the surrounding hills, storms that can appear without warning and vanish just as quickly. Along the northern shore, the remains of Capernaum, the village that Jesus made his base of operations, still stand. A 4th century synagogue built atop the foundations of an earlier one. an octagonal church built, according to tradition, directly over the house of the Apostle Peter. Pilgrims touch the ancient stones. They read the Gospels aloud in the shade of eucalyptus trees. And for a moment, the distance between then and now seems to collapse. Fishing boats still work these waters using methods little changed from ancient times. The same species of fish, known locally as St. Peter's fish, still fill the nets. And at sunset, when the light turns golden and the hills go purple, it is easy to imagine a world before highways and hotels, a world of fishermen and wandering teachers, a world where everything was about to change. On a hillside overlooking the Sea of Galilee, a church marks the place where tradition says Jesus delivered his most famous sermon. This is the Mount of Beatitudes, where the Sermon on the Mount was preached. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. The words have echoed through 20 centuries, shaping ethics, inspiring movements, challenging empires. They have been quoted by saints and revolutionaries, pacifists and warriors, the powerful and the powerless alike. The church itself is modern, built in 1938 by the Italian architect Antonio Baluzzi, who designed many of the Holy Land's Christian shrines. Its octagonal shape reflects the 8 Beatitudes. Its gardens are
immaculate,
filled with bougainvillea and rosemary. But the view is timeless. Below, the lake shimmers. The hills of the Golan rise to the east, and on a clear day, the snow-capped peak of Mount Hermon is visible in the distance, the highest point in the region, where some believe the Transfiguration took place. Whether one is a believer or not, the setting is undeniably powerful. There is something about standing where words were spoken that changed the world. Something about placing oneself in the geography of transformation. Rising above the Jezreel Valley, a dome-shaped mountain stands alone against the sky. This is Mount Tabor, and for centuries it has been associated with one of Christianity's most mysterious events. According to the Gospels, Jesus took 3 of his disciples, Peter, James, and John, up a high mountain. There, before their eyes, he was transfigured, his face shining like the sun, his clothes becoming white as light. Moses and Elijah appeared beside him. A voice from a cloud declared him the Son of God. The Basilica of the Transfiguration, perched on the mountain's summit, commemorates this moment. Built in 1924, also by Antonio Baluzzi, it incorporates the remains of earlier Byzantine and Crusader churches that occupied the same sacred site. Inside, a mosaic above the altar depicts the scene: Jesus in radiant glory, flanked by the prophets, while the disciples cower below. Mount Tabor is not the only candidate for the site of the Transfiguration. Some scholars prefer Mount Hermon, which is higher and more remote. But Tabor has held the devotion of pilgrims since at least the 4th century. Its isolation, its shape, its commanding views, all contribute to a sense that this is a place apart. A thin place, as the Celtic mystics would say, where the veil between worlds grows thin. Nestled in the hills of the Lower Galilee, A town of churches and minarets spreads across the slopes, where tradition says an angel appeared to a young woman. This is Nazareth, the hometown of Jesus. For most of history, Nazareth was a small, obscure village, mentioned nowhere in the Hebrew Bible, overlooked by ancient historians, dismissed by skeptics as too insignificant to have produced anything of note. "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" one of the disciples famously asked. Yet this unremarkable place became the setting for one of Christianity's foundational stories, the Annunciation, when the angel Gabriel appeared to Mary and told her she would bear a son. The Basilica of the Annunciation, the largest church in the Middle East, rises over the grotto where this encounter is said to have taken place. Its modern concrete facade, completed in 1969, houses ancient caves, Byzantine mosaics, and Crusader walls layered beneath. Inside the grotto, pilgrims descend to a rough-hewn cave. The air is cool, candles flicker, Latin inscriptions mark the spot. Verbum caro hic factum est. The word was made flesh here. Above the grotto, the upper church is filled with mosaics and paintings donated by Catholic communities from around the world, each depicting Mary and the infant Jesus in the artistic traditions of different cultures. Japanese Mary in kimono, African Mary in traditional dress, Filipino, Polish, Mexican, Australian. A global gallery of devotion, all converging on this one small town in the Galilean hills. Nazareth today is a predominantly Arab city, home to one of the largest Palestinian Christian communities in the world. The call to prayer sounds from mosques, church bells ring from steeples, and in the narrow streets of the old market, the scent of cardamom coffee and freshly baked bread fills the air. Where the Mediterranean coast bends northward, a city of golden stone rises from a natural harbor that has sheltered ships for more than 4,000 years. This is Jaffa, one of the oldest ports in the world. Egyptian records mention Jaffa nearly 3,500 years ago. Greek mythology placed it as the home of Andromeda, the princess chained to a rock and rescued by Perseus. The Hebrew Bible says it was from Jaffa that the prophet Jonah set sail before being swallowed by a great fish. Layer upon layer of legend, port of 100 departures. For centuries, Jaffa was the gateway to the Holy Land, the place where pilgrims disembarked after crossing the Mediterranean, beginning their journey to Jerusalem. Crusaders, merchants, travelers, and conquerors all passed through its walls. In the early 20th century, Jaffa was a thriving Arab city, the cultural and economic center of Palestinian life. Its orange groves were famous throughout Europe. Its journalists and intellectuals shaped the region's discourse. The events of 1948 changed everything. Most of Jaffa's Arab population fled or was expelled during the war, accompanied Israel's founding. The city became part of Tel Aviv, absorbed into the first Hebrew-speaking metropolis in modern history. Today, Jaffa is a neighborhood of contrasts. Ancient alleyways meet sleek galleries. Restored Ottoman houses stand beside trendy restaurants. The past and the present negotiate uneasily. And in the old harbor, fishermen still bring in their catch at dawn, as they have for millennia. North of Tel Aviv, the ruins of a city that once rivaled Rome itself stretch along the Mediterranean shore. This is Caesarea, the port that Herod the Great built to honor the Emperor Augustus. Constructed in the 1st century BCE, Caesarea was an engineering marvel, a deep-water harbor carved from the coastline using a revolutionary concrete that could harden underwater. Nothing like it had been attempted before. Herod filled the city with temples, theaters, and palaces, a hippodrome for chariot races, an aqueduct to bring water from Mount Carmel, bathhouses, markets, and administrative buildings worthy of a Roman capital. For more than 600 years, Caesarea served as the seat of Roman and Byzantine governors. It was here that Pontius Pilate had his headquarters. Here that the Apostle Paul was imprisoned before being sent to Rome. Underwater archaeologists have explored the submerged remains of Herod's harbor, finding the massive blocks that formed its breakwaters. Many still bear the marks of their makers, fingerprints in concrete, preserved for 2,000 years. Above the water, the ruins continue for miles. A Crusader fortress built atop Roman foundations, Byzantine mosaics depicting birds and animals, a theater still used for concerts today, its acoustics as perfect as the day it was built. Empires rise and fall. The sea claims what it will. And yet, the stones remain. Further north, where a peninsula juts into the Mediterranean, a city of sea walls and minarets guards a harbor that has welcomed sailors since the time of the Phoenicians. This is Acre, one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in the world. More than 4,000 years of history lie buried beneath its streets. The Canaanites built here, the Egyptians conquered it, the Phoenicians made it a trading hub. Alexander the Great passed through. The Crusaders made it their last stronghold in the Holy Land, a fortress city that held out for a century before falling to the Mamluks in 1291. Beneath the modern city, tunnels and chambers from the Crusader era have been excavated and opened to visitors. The Knights Hospitaller built a vast underground complex here, a crypt, a refectory, a tunnel leading to the harbor. For centuries, these spaces were forgotten, buried beneath Ottoman buildings. Only in the 20th century were they rediscovered. Walking through the Crusader halls, one passes beneath vaulted ceilings that have stood for 800 years. The stones are cool to the touch. The silence is broken only by footsteps. Here, knights prepared for battle. Here, pilgrims prayed. Here, the dream of a Christian Holy Land flickered and finally died. Above ground, Acre is a living city, its markets fragrant with spices, its mosques calling the faithful to prayer, its sea walls battered by waves as they have been for millennia. The Crusaders are gone. The Ottomans are gone. The British, who made Acre a prison during the Mandate period, are gone. But the city remains. Climbing the slopes of Mount Carmel, a cascade of terraced gardens rises toward a golden-domed shrine that seems to float above the city of Haifa. This is the Bahai World Center, one of the most striking sacred sites in the Holy Land. The Baha'i faith, founded in 19th century Persia, considers this mountain to be holy ground. It was here that the Bab, the forerunner of the faith, was buried after his execution in 1850. His shrine, at the center of the terraced gardens, draws Baha'i pilgrims from around the world. The gardens themselves are a work of devotion. 19 terraces, representing the 18 disciples of the Bab, plus the Bab himself, descend the mountainside in perfect symmetry. Every hedge is trimmed to mathematical precision. Every flower bed is curated for year-round bloom. Volunteers tend the gardens by hand. Pesticides are forbidden. The work is considered a form of prayer. Looking down from the upper terraces, the city of Haifa spreads below, a mosaic of neighborhoods, the curve of the harbor, the blue of the Mediterranean beyond. The shrine of the Bab glows at the center, its dome covered in 12,000 tiles gilded with real gold. For the Baha'i, this place represents the unity of humanity, a faith that teaches that all religions are one, that all prophets speak the same truth. In a land of division, it offers a vision of something else. South of Jerusalem, the landscape changes. The hills flatten into rocky plains, the wadis deepen into canyons, and the sky opens above a wilderness that stretches to the horizon in every direction. This is the Negev Desert, and it holds secrets older than civilization. More than half of Israel's land area is desert, yet fewer than 10% of its people live here. The Negev remains a frontier, a place of army bases, kibbutzim, Bedouin encampments, and silence. At its heart lies a crater so vast it can be seen from space. Maktesh Ramon, the Ramon crater, is not a meteor impact or a volcanic caldera, but something rarer. An erosion crater formed over millions of years as softer rock layers collapsed beneath harder ones. It stretches 40 kilometers in length, 9 kilometers in width, and plunges 500 meters to its floor. It is, quite simply, one of the most extraordinary geological features on Earth. Standing at the crater's edge, the silence is almost physical.
No traffic, no voices.
Only the wind and the cry of distant birds. The colors shift with the light, red, ochre, purple, gold, as the sun moves across the sky. Fossils of marine creatures 200 million years old emerge from the rock. Volcanic formations rise from the crater floor like monuments to a younger Earth. And at night, when the stars appear in numbers impossible to count, the Milky Way arches overhead in a river of light. The Nabateans, the same civilization that carved Petra in Jordan, once crossed this desert, establishing way stations along the ancient incense trade routes. Their cities still stand in the Negev: Avdat, Shivta, Mamshit, UNESCO World Heritage Sites, largely unvisited, slowly returning to the sand. At the southern tip of the Negev, where the desert meets the Red Sea, a narrow sliver of coastline opens to waters of impossible blue. This is Eilat, Israel's gateway to the tropics. Just north of the city, hidden in a canyon of red and golden stone, lies one of the oldest mining sites in the world. This is Timna, the valley where copper was extracted more than 6,000 years ago. Egyptian pharaohs sent expeditions here to mine the precious metal that would be forged into tools, weapons, and ornaments. A temple to the goddess Hathor, protector of miners, still stands among the rocks, decorated with hieroglyphs that have survived 3 millennia. The landscape is otherworldly. Sandstone formations rise in arches and pillars sculpted by wind and time. The most famous, known as Solomon's Pillars, towers above the valley floor, its striations marking the passage of geological epochs. Despite the name, Solomon's Pillars have no connection to the biblical king. But the valley's association with copper production during the Bronze Age has led some scholars to suggest that this may be the source of the copper used in Solomon's temple. At night, the valley is transformed. Artificial lights illuminate the rock formations in shifting colors. The stars emerge overhead, and for a moment, the ancient and the modern merge in a landscape that feels borrowed from another planet. Seven kilometers south of Jerusalem, beyond a checkpoint and a wall, lies the town where, according to Christian tradition, the Messiah was born. This is Bethlehem, the little town that changed the world. The Church of the Nativity, built over the cave where tradition says Mary gave birth to Jesus, is one of the oldest continuously operating churches in existence. The original structure was erected by the Emperor Constantine in the 4th century. Remarkably, much of the 6th century Justinian reconstruction still stands, a survival made possible, according to legend, by a mosaic of the 3 magi dressed in Persian clothing. When Persian armies invaded in 614, they saw the image and spared the church, recognizing their own ancestors among the wise men who had come to worship the newborn king. The entrance to the church is deliberately low, a door so small that visitors must bow to enter. Some say it was built this way to prevent soldiers from riding horses into the sanctuary. Others see a theological intention, an architectural demand for humility. Inside, the basilica is dim and ancient. Massive columns line the nave, their surfaces worn smooth by centuries of hands. Fragments of floor mosaics, dating to Constantine's original church, are visible beneath modern glass. And beneath the main altar, a silver star marks the precise spot where Jesus is said to have been born. An inscription reads, Hic de Virgine Maria, Jesus Christus natus est. Here, Jesus Christ was born of the Virgin Mary. Bethlehem today is a Palestinian city in the West Bank. The separation barrier runs nearby, visible from certain rooftops. The politics of the present press against the devotion of the past. And yet, pilgrims continue to come. At Christmas, the square before the church fills with celebrants. Choirs sing in the cold night air, and for a moment, the weight of history and hope converges on this ancient place. 30 kilometers south of Bethlehem, in the heart of the southern West Bank, lies a city whose name carries the weight of millennia. This is Hebron, one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in the world, and one of the most contested. According to biblical tradition, Hebron is where Abraham purchased a burial cave, the Cave of Machpelah, to inter his wife Sarah. Abraham himself, Isaac, Rebekah, Jacob, and Leah are all said to be buried here. The site is sacred to Judaism, Christianity, and Islam alike, and therein lies the tension. Above the cave, a massive Herodian structure has stood for more than 2,000 years. Its walls, built from the same enormous stones used at the Western Wall in Jerusalem. Today, this structure houses both a mosque
and a synagogue,
physically divided by walls and metal detectors. Hebron is a city of checkpoints and separation, of settlers and soldiers, of friction and fear. The old city's market, once a thriving center of Palestinian commerce, is now largely shuttered, its streets patrolled, its rooftops covered with mesh to catch the debris thrown from above. It is difficult to visit Hebron without confronting the complexities of this land, the sacred and the political, the ancient and the urgent. And yet, the cave remains. Whatever one believes about its occupants, the tradition is older than Islam, older than Christianity, older than the rabbinical Judaism we know today. Abraham, in some form, rests here, and three faiths claim him as their father. On the eastern slopes of Mount Scopus, overlooking the old city of Jerusalem, stands a hospital where doctors from different nations treat patients from all communities. This is Augusta Victoria, and it is a
reminder
that the sacred geography of this land includes not only sites of devotion, but also sites of healing. Throughout history, the Holy Land has been a place where the suffering came seeking cure. The Dead Sea's minerals, the hot springs of Tiberias, the waters of the Jordan River, where pilgrims have sought spiritual and physical healing since the early Christian era. Even today, hospitals and clinics dot the landscape, established by churches, by charities, by governments, attempting to mend what conflict and hardship have broken. One of the most remarkable is the St. Louis Hospital in Jerusalem's Old City, a French institution that has served the poor since 1851, offering medical care regardless of religion, nationality, or ability to pay. The building itself is beautiful, vaulted ceilings, tiled courtyards, the gentle shade of olive trees. But its true beauty lies in its mission. In a land where identity is contested, where walls divide communities and checkpoints fragment daily life, there are places where a different logic prevails, where the injured are treated, where the sick are comforted, where the ancient command to love one's neighbor is taken literally. These too are part of the story. In the Jordan Valley, beneath the bluffs of the Judean foothills, archaeologists have uncovered a city that rivaled the greatest centers of the ancient world. This is Beit She'an, and its ruins tell the story of empires that rose and fell across 2 millennia. Settled since at least the 5th millennium BCE, Beit She'an became a major Egyptian administrative center in the Bronze Age. Later, it passed to the Canaanites, the Israelites, the Assyrians, the Greeks, and the Romans. Under Rome, it became one of the 10 cities of the Decapolis, a league of Greek-speaking urban centers that stretched from Damascus to the Jordan Valley. Today, the ruins are among the most extensive and well-preserved in the region. A colonnaded main street lined with shops, a massive bathhouse with original mosaics, a theater seating 7,000 spectators, a hippodrome, temples, fountains, and public squares. An earthquake in 749 CE brought it all crashing down, burying the Roman city beneath rubble that preserved it, ironically, for future generations. Walking through Beit She'an at sunset, the columns cast long shadows across the ancient pavement. The scale is staggering, the silence profound, and in the stillness, you can almost hear the voices of those who walked these streets: merchants and soldiers, priests and slaves, the powerful and the forgotten. On a hill overlooking the Jezreel Valley, beneath a modern kibbutz, lie the remains of a city whose very name has become synonymous with the end of the world. This is Megiddo, the biblical Armageddon. For more than 6,000 years, Megiddo was one of the most important strategic sites in the world.
Ancient Near East.
It commanded the Via Maris, the great coastal road linking Egypt to Mesopotamia. Armies that wished to move between empires had to pass through this valley. Whoever controlled Megiddo controlled the crossroads of the world. Archaeologists have identified more than 20 layers of ancient cities here, stacked one atop another like pages in a book. Egyptian, Canaanite, Israelite, Assyrian. Each civilization built on the ruins of the last. A Bronze Age palace, an Israelite grain silo, a massive water tunnel carved through solid rock. But it is the name that captures the imagination. In the book of Revelation, the final battle between good and evil is foretold to take place at a location called Armageddon, a word derived from the Hebrew Ha-Megiddo, the mountain of Megiddo. Whether this prophecy is literal or symbolic, the association has given Megiddo an almost mythic status. Armies have clashed in this valley since the beginning of
Recorded history.
Thutmose III of Egypt fought here in 1457 BCE, the first battle in history to be recorded in detail. British General Edmund Allenby fought the Ottomans here in 1918. Perhaps it is fitting that a place of so much conflict should bear the name of the final conflict. Or perhaps the prophecy simply recognized what geography already knew, that this valley has always been a place where the fate of nations was decided. At the edge of the Hula Valley, where the Jordan River begins its journey southward, a nature reserve preserves a landscape that was nearly lost forever. This is the Hula, and its restoration is one of the great conservation success stories of the modern world. In the 1950s, Israel drained the Hula marshlands, vast wetlands that had supported diverse ecosystems for millennia. The goal was to create farmland and eliminate malaria. The result was an ecological disaster. Without the wetlands to filter and absorb nutrients, fertilizer runoff poured into the Sea of Galilee, triggering algal blooms. The exposed peat soil caught fire spontaneously. Entire bird populations, which had used the Hula as a critical stopover on their migration routes, began to disappear. In the 1990s, a portion of the drained marshland was deliberately re-flooded. Today, the Hula Nature Reserve is a sanctuary again. More than 500 million birds pass through twice each year. Cranes, pelicans, storks, eagles, and hundreds of other species. In autumn and winter, tens of thousands of common cranes descend on the valley, their calls filling the air at dawn and dusk. Rangers feed them deliberately, keeping them away from agricultural fields. The cranes have learned the schedule, gathering in enormous flocks to await their daily rations. It is a strange and beautiful sight, a compromise between nature and cultivation, between restoration and management. The Hula teaches a lesson that applies
beyond its borders.
Some things, once destroyed, can be brought back. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough. North of the Sea of Galilee, the land rises sharply into a volcanic plateau, scarred by ancient lava flows and fortified by modern defenses. This is the Golan Heights, a landscape shaped by fire and war. Millions of years ago, volcanic eruptions built this highland from basalt, a dark, dense rock that underlies everything here. The soil is rich, the springs are abundant, and the views extend in every direction, across the Galilee to the west, toward Damascus to the east. For this strategic value, the Golan has been fought over for centuries. In 1967, during the Six-Day War, Israel captured the plateau from Syria. In 1973, Syrian forces attempted to retake it in a battle that saw some of the largest tank engagements since World War II. Today, the heights remain under Israeli control, a status recognized by some nations, disputed by others,
And contested in international law.
Scattered across the plateau are the remains of ancient synagogues, dating to the Talmudic period, the centuries after the destruction of the Second Temple, when Jewish communities flourished throughout the Galilee. At Katzrin, at Gamla, at El Kanatir, archaeologists have uncovered elaborate stone carvings, ritual baths, and community centers that reveal a vibrant religious culture far from Jerusalem. The Golan is also dotted with more recent ruins, abandoned Syrian villages, some destroyed in war, others evacuated and never repopulated. Bunkers and trenches from multiple conflicts, signs warning of uncleared minefields. It is a landscape where the ancient and the modern, the natural and the military, exist in uneasy proximity. At the northern tip of the Mediterranean coast, where cliffs plunge into the sea and grottos carved by waves open to the light, a border crossing separates Israel from Lebanon,
This is Rosh HaNikra.
the edge of the land. The grottos here are among the most striking natural features in the region, a network of caves and tunnels sculpted over millennia by the relentless action of water against chalk. A cable car descends the cliff face, carrying visitors to walkways that thread through the illuminated chambers. The sound of waves echoes in the darkness. Light filters through cracks, turning the walls blue and green. During the British Mandate, a railway tunnel was cut through this headland, linking Palestine to Lebanon. The tunnel still exists, sealed at the border, visible from the grottos. It is a reminder of a time when trains ran between Haifa and Beirut, when the map of this region was drawn differently. Today, the border is closed. Visitors can look through the fence at the Lebanese territory beyond. Flags flutter on both sides. Soldiers patrol. The land that was once connected is now divided. Our journey nears its end. We have walked the shores of the Dead Sea and climbed the heights of Masada. We have descended into the tunnels beneath Jerusalem and stood in the garden where prayer gave way to sorrow. We have traced the footsteps of prophets in the Galilee, touched the stones where faith took form, wandered through Roman ruins and Crusader halls. We have seen the places where three religions intersect, sometimes in harmony, often in tension, always in complexity. This is a land where nothing is simple, where every stone has been fought over, where every name carries weight, where the past is never truly past, because it is still being contested in the present. There is suffering here. Walls and checkpoints, occupation and resistance, communities divided by fear and memory. There is no way to tell the story of this land honestly without acknowledging the pain. Pain that is ongoing, pain that defies easy resolution. And yet, there is also beauty. Beauty in the ancient stones. Beauty in the desert at dawn. Beauty in the devotion of pilgrims who have traveled from the ends of the earth to touch something sacred. Beauty in the olive trees that have stood for centuries, in the fishermen casting nets on the Galilee, in the calls to prayer and the chiming of church bells, sometimes overlapping, sometimes competing, but always rising into the same sky. This is the Holy Land, not because it is pure, not because it is peaceful, but because, for billions of people across millennia, it has been the place where the human and the divine come closest to touching. The secrets are not all revealed. Perhaps they never will be. New discoveries continue beneath the soil. Scrolls, inscriptions, foundations of buildings that reshape what we thought we knew. And the secrets that matter most, the nature of faith, the possibility of peace, the meaning of this contested ground, remain beyond the reach of archaeology.
But perhaps that is as it should be.
Perhaps the mystery is part of the gift. This brings our journey through Israel and Palestine to a close. We have traveled from the depths of the Dead Sea to the heights of the Golan, from the ancient walls of Jerusalem to the remote monasteries of the desert, from cities founded before history began to battlefields where history continues to be written. We have seen, as best we can, what 3,000 years of secrets look like when they are carved in stone and spoken in prayer. Mountains still divide the land. Rivers still flow toward the sea. Believers still press their hands against ancient walls. And somewhere in a cave, perhaps, another scroll waits to be found. If this journey has moved you, or challenged you, or shown you something you had not seen before, leave a comment below. And if explorations like this one speak to you, places beyond the headlines, beyond the simple stories, where the past and the present wrestle in the same landscape, subscribe to True Horizons. There are more roads to travel, more secrets to uncover, more of this complicated, beautiful world to understand. Thanks for watching, and see you on the next road.